In 1973, the UK is in the middle of an energy crisis that will see petrol shortages, price hikes, and protests for higher pay. The workforce has their jobs cut to a 3-day working week. Amid blackouts to conserve electricity due to industrial action led by coal miners and railway workers. This sounds eerily familiar. But South Wales is about to be hit by a much bigger tragedy. On July 15th of the same year, 16-year-old Sandra Newton has been enjoying a night out in the little town of Britton Ferry with friends. It's late, so she decides to hitchhike home, which apparently is nothing unusual for the early 70s. It will also sadly be the last decision little Sandra will ever make. Her body was found 3 days later, about 7 miles away, under a bridge near a coal mine in Tomoir. She had been raped and then strangled with her own skirt. Being the 70s, there are no mobile phones, internet or DNA, so police are at a loss as to who could have committed such a brutal act. 2 months later, almost to the day, best friends Geraldine Hughes and Pauline Floyd, both also aged 16, work in the local sewing factory and have made their way out on the town to Port Talbot. After spending the afternoon together at the annual Neath Fair, it's Saturday night and they've headed to the top-ranked nightclub, the place to be seen, dancing the night away to tracks like Stealers Wheel, Stuck in the Middle of You and David Bowie's Life on Mars. When the night comes to an end at around 1 a.m, the girls begin to make the long walk home together. They are found the next day, about 5 miles away, in Clondarcy, near Neath, in a woodland cope beside a football field, in the early hours of Sunday, the 16th of September, by an elderly man out walking his dog. Both have been raped, beaten, and strangled. It appeared one of the girls had tried to get away, but had been dragged back before succumbing to her attacker. Both are fully clothed, with very long lengths of rope tied tight around their necks. The excess rope hanging away from the neck is about 5 feet in length, like a dog leash. At the autopsy, it transpires both girls must have been in a state of undress at one point, as leaves, twigs, and each other's blood are found on the inside of both sets of clothes. The killer must have made them get redressed before the nightmare was over. The area is so secluded, police are convinced the perpetrator is someone local and knows their way around. For a small police force of Swansea, they are now facing an absolute mammoth task, as at the time, the M4 was under construction, with hundreds of workers, including itinerant workers. There's the local steelworks factory. The fair is in town all weekend. There's a college nearby, not to mention the party goers at the club that night. Over 150 detectives from all over South Wales are brought in to help. A witness comes forward, a driver on the road at the time the club closed. He had seen the girls talking to someone in a white Austin 1100 at the bus stop. When the driver got to the traffic lights, he looked in his rear view mirror and saw them get into the car. The car then pulls up beside him at the lights. Both girls were in the front seat, which obscures his view but could confirm the driver was a male with dark bushy hair and a moustache. They then drive away towards Neath. There are over 10,000 drivers with this car in the surrounding area. 3 other witnesses say they drove past a light-coloured car parked in a lay-by at approximately 1:15 near where the girls were found. The newspapers had now named him the Saturday Night Strangler. By July of '74, police have over 30,000 suspects, all spoken to and logged, and are no closer to catching the monster that done this. With their resources needed elsewhere, the case goes cold. It will take another 27 years before there is a breakthrough for detectives. DNA will come calling. By 1990, DNA has made an appearance. The girls have not been forgotten. All their clothes were kept, including their underwear, at the forensics lab. These garments are tested in 1995 by forensic scientist Colin Dark, but they're mixed with more than one DNA and can't be separated at this time. In '98 they're checked again, but still can't be separated properly. In 2000, finally, the swabs taken could be made into 3 individual DNA samples: Pauline's, Geraldine's, and the suspect's. On the 27th of January 2000, Operation Magnum is launched, and Detective Inspector Paul Bethel and Phil Reese get to work, along with forensic scientist Colin Dark. Before moving forward, they're asked by Colin if there were any other murders similar to the girls in 1973. They remember Sandra Newton, but said they had closed the case, convinced it was a married man she was seeing at the time. The man had admitted being with Sandra on the night, having sex, then getting into an argument and storming off away from each other. Sandra must have lied at the time to her parents as to where she was going for obvious reasons. Colin checks the DNA found on Sandra's clothes anyway. The man's DNA was there, but so was a separate man's. It was the same match as the person who killed the 2 girls. They now know they've been dealing with a serial killer. After checking the DNA database, they get no possible links. Going through thousands of suspects, they manage to get the number down to 500 serious culprits. They find 2 rare defects in the killer's DNA profile. They run a test on the database using people with similar defects. This gets the suspects down to around 150 approx. Brainstorming, they realise that 80% of serial killers will operate within a 3 to 4 mile radius. Using this theory, they whittle that number down to 13. It's at this point the name Paul Capin jumps out to them. It's an unusual name. Police unearthed the case file of Joseph Capin. He was spoken to at the time, drove a white Austin 1100, matched the description given by the witness at the lights that night. They go to Capin's address, only to find his wife, who tells them he died of lung cancer in 1990. Disappointed, but in no way giving up, they asked Joseph Capin's immediate family to give DNA samples. His wife, son, and daughter give it willingly. The samples come back so close it can't be ignored. With this, the team ask the Home Office if they can have permission to exhume Joseph Capin's body for DNA testing, which they are granted. It's the first time in South Wales history to ever exhume a body in a police investigation. It transpires that Joseph Capin had been a truck driver and a doorman in and around the area, had been known to police for petty crimes since the age of 12, car thefts, assault and breaking into houses to rob the gas meters. It came to light, aged 22, he walked a young 15-year-old girl round Sandfield's estate, takes her into a half-built house, then tries to attack her. But when she screamed, he ran away. He had married his wife in February of 1963, still aged 22 at the time. 10 days later, he was jailed for 3 years for burglary and theft. His wife admitted it was an abusive relationship and that he had forced himself on her violently every other week. Welsh police still to this day used Cappen's DNA against other cold cases of the time, but haven't yet any evidence of other victims.